Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
Welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Nicole, how are you?
I'm good. You know, it's summer. We're heading into a holiday weekend. I'm doing all right with that.
Well, yeah, you were telling me, and we'll get into this in a minute, that you're gonna go on this really cool trip. So let's talk about that in a minute. And we also kind of on the pre-show, we talked a little bit about social branding. You're doing a lot more of that. And I kind of mentioned that I've seen you on Twitter and things like that more often over the last several months. So I thought that was cool. I was like, wow, Nicole's kind of getting back into it, I guess, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, so I've been on a couple of vacations, or I'm about to go on one vacation, and I was on another vacation, went to France. So, I think it's good to get away from work sometimes. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about how uncertain the world has been, because this is
Yeah.
Everybody knows that now, right? The last couple of years have been a lot. But it's such an important part of self-care to take that break, and I always know that I need it when I find myself out on my morning run thinking about work, or chilling out on the weekend reading about community management or something like that, right? It's not what you want to be doing. But yeah, I'm really lucky. I just hit my 5-year anniversary at Zendesk.
Wow.
And one of the big perks that Zendesk gives us for that is a sabbatical. So we get to take a 6-week break somewhere in our 5th or 6th year, typically, if we want to. So I'm taking 5 weeks off this summer.
Wow.
And
oh my God.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I always thought that it would be I'm going to go to Europe for a month, or I'm going to go to Japan. And now is not a good time to be traveling. And so I'm really excited to just treat it like summer break, like when we were kids, and just hang out and get some house projects done and spend a bunch of time sitting by the lake reading a book. Just
no community books though, right?
It's gonna be hard for me to stay away from them, but I'm gonna try to just read for fun.
There's nothing wrong with that. When I go out for my runs, a lot of times some of my work inspiration and ideas, they don't always pan out, but they come through a run. So today I was running this 7, and this is probably dumb, but I'll tell you a little story just because I think it's, to me, kind of fun. And I would love to hear your thoughts. So I went on this run. It's about 7.5 miles. And, during this thing, let's go back. Yesterday, I had this conversation with my CEO. He was like, and he's always coming up with these ideas that I should be going to do, but, I have a lot on my plate, so I have to do some of those things too. But one of the things he mentioned, and I was kind of talking about, it'd be really cool to really start kind of going out, and you guys do this all the time, but it's just me. So, and we don't have anything like this, is to go on this road show. And this road show would look something similar like I go to San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then do these events. And during these events, we get 10, 15 people there at each one. It's kind of small, it's fairly cheap, and maybe find a speaker, whether it's a customer or whether it's a prospect or even, a Reltio or whatever. So I was thinking about that. And he goes, yeah, Chris, you should think about when you do those kinds of things is to brand it. You need to figure out how to brand it. And when you brand it, this way it sticks. It doesn't have to be Reltio, but it has to be so that kind of stuck. And then he was like, then you could probably go to one of our, and this is on our website, so it's fine. One of our customers is CarMax, for example. Then you could go to CarMax, wherever they are, and you could have a conversation with them, and then, and then talk about how they not just use our product, but go into the CarMax, store and show kind of hey, you go to CarMax, you do the, you start doing these things. And so when you look at kind of our system, for example, it's a back-end system that really kind of operates every single business system that connects to it, right? So to get this 360 view of the customer. So quick example, and I'll stop on the work stuff, but basically, what it does is, you have different stores that you can go into at CarMax, right? And so that's one. So if you've been to another CarMax, all the systems used to be disconnected. Now they're connected. And then when you get a loan or, and then you also think about the people in your household, right? And think about all that information about the husband, wife, kids, whatever, in one household and all those kinds of things. That getting that information is hard to get because it's different systems that it's in and everything else. Reltio connects it. So he was just saying, then you can go have a conversation with the person and then kind of show it, video it, do all these things. And I was like, I don't know, man, this sounds like a really hard. And then on my run, I thought, dude, I could do that. That'd be so fun to kind of, go to these companies and show the real value of what Reltio is giving, because, nobody can see what Reltio is doing per se. But if you could tell those stories in real life, I go to CarMax, I find a car. Where did that car come from? It came from another store. And then I got approval for some financing. And then boom, they found the store, they brought it to me, and all this stuff is powered by Reltio kind of stuff, right? And then just doing that on video and however you do it, or whatever. And I thought, yeah, I could actually think about how to, to brand that. And I could call it, I live in Dallas, Texas. I could call it Data Cowboy, right? And then when I go to these events and when I go to these people's places of work, I could have a cowboy hat on. I could have, because you think about a cowboy, right? Like it's just people just, I don't know what it is, but there's some charismatic thing about a cowboy, for whatever reason. I don't know. But that's what I was thinking about, whether anything happens or not. I don't know. But it was just, I came home to my wife and I thought, Leah, I got to tell you the story, and she's, yeah, that sounds great, babe,
Yeah, totally. Well,
anyways.
What I love about that story though is like you're talking about like all these creative ideas that came up. You said you came while you were out on your run, right? Yeah. And so, on the one hand, what I was calling out was, it's a good time to take a break when you find yourself thinking about work too much when you're not at work. Yeah. On the other hand, it's kind of that unconscious or subconscious brain does a lot of those processing of ideas. And I was talking with my teachers about this last week where oftentimes when we have a challenge, our tendency is to want to like think through it and like figure it out. Yeah. And sometimes the best thing to do is actually like set it down and walk away from it. Go on a run, go on a walk, go play a video game. Yeah. Let your brain do something else, because chances are while you're focused on other things, your subconscious brain will come up with the really good ideas. I remember listening to some podcast a while back. I don't know if it was Fresh Air, but it was something along those lines. And they were interviewing John Cleese from like Monty Python, right? Yeah. Going back a little while, right? And he was talking about how whenever he would get stumped on a joke, he would sleep on it. Yeah. And he's like, damn, if I didn't wake up every time in the morning and I had the punchline of the joke, or like my brain had figured it out. And he was talking about how it took him a long time to like trust that his brain would process things in the background and he could step away from something he was trying to figure out and it would be sorted. But he was like, it always works, and so I think that's an important call out. And on the flip side, a run can be a great time to do things like listen to a podcast about community, maybe give you some inspiration for your work
like the one that we're on today with Nicole and Chris, right? Peers over beers.
Things like peers over beers. But no, I do like your idea though. I think, that's the other thing that I heard in there is you're talking about things that start to cross that bridge between community and customer marketing. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that seems like a really great thing where like maybe you can loop that team in and bring them in. And, after you go do your Data Cowboy visit, then they can publish a story, right? Yes. Maybe you can source that information and come up with some artifacts out of that too.
Oh, absolutely. That's the key at the end of the day. It's not just, building, relationships with people, which is highly important when building what I think of customer-led or community-led kind of stuff, but it's, you've got to help each other, right? Like this would go to customer marketing, they'll want to put it on the website, all this kind of stuff, and lots of artifacts, and even potential campaigns down the road that are going on within, the digital team and growth and things like that. But, I just want to do what I'm good at, and that's building relationships with people and then capturing that information, some way, somehow, and anywhere I go, because that's the key at the end of the day. Yeah, it's great that your community is building relationships with each other. Sometimes when you don't capture that information, it doesn't always necessarily have to be used for marketing purposes, but it could be used for, posting on the community or, post on LinkedIn and show all the fun that you're having and building relationships and drinking beer and whatever the hell else you do, I don't know.
I mean, it's about telling the story of what you're doing. I've been working this a lot lately with my team. How do we tell the story? We've actually had like some really big successes this year. Our community events program has grown a bunch. Our last 2 events were like the biggest events we've ever had. And they're sharing these data points and they were like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, all right, well, let's talk about how we share this story more internally, right? Like, how do we make some slides? How do we get that in front of some of our executive team? How do we tell other teams that want to work with us, hey, these are the kinds of results we can have. And so, what you were just saying right there, some of it is capturing things. You've got artifacts, and so that the work that you do is always amplified and has some evergreen aspects.
Yes.
But whether you use it for marketing or not, you need to be able to have those things to point to as your success stories. This is something I find a lot of people struggle with, is the idea that you do really have to toot your own horn when you're at work. And a lot of us are uncomfortable doing that, right? We grew up believing in being modest and humble. And, like at Zendesk, one of our company values is humbledent, which is humble and confident mixed together.
That's great.
But part of that confident side of humbledent is sharing it when you have a big win and sharing a success. I actually do a lot of mentoring outside of work as well.
Oh, really?
Yep. I do it through the Wisconsin Women's Network, and then I'm also going to be doing it through the community club as well.
Awesome. Love it.
And I was talking with one of my mentees last week, and she was asking me, she said, somebody on my team that started around the same time as me got a promotion and I didn't, and I don't understand why. And so we talked about, one, that's a great conversation to have with your manager.
Very good.
But 2, you need to make sure that you're sharing what you're working on with your manager. I think because of the way that we go through school, a lot of us come into the workforce under the impression that like, well, if I just work hard and do good work, it'll speak for itself and other people will just see it and they'll recognize me and they'll promote me.
It's not enough.
The reality I'm here to tell everybody is like, as a manager, we try real hard to like see the work that our employees are doing.
Yeah.
But the best thing that you can do is like write up that little summary sheet and get really good at telling the story of your own successes. Here was the business problem we were trying to solve. Here's what we did. Here was the results. I led this process, or I collaborated with these teams on this. It's so important to go to your own horn. And it feels like it blows people's minds sometimes when I say that. And they're like, you mean it's not enough just to do the good work? I also have to talk about it. It's like, yeah, absolutely. You definitely share that story.
I think at the end of the day, like there's no way that I would have been promoted to director, for example, back in November if I didn't, in a way, toot my own horn. Yeah. So, I do it in a different way. Like I'm not saying, look at what Chris Detzel's doing, but I do say, if you facilitate really good things that happen and toot the horn of what community is doing with those people, like, for example, if, there's 10 people in the organization or 5 people in the organization helping you create content, getting on webinars, answering questions on, community, and you're letting people know within the organization that they're doing this on community. Well, who runs community? I do, right? Like, and so, I'll give you an example, and something's coming up for me, for community specifically, that every 6 weeks, I get the opportunity to present in front of what we call the Reltio or the EROC. So it's Executive Rock. So all the executives at Reltio, in addition to directors and VPs, are on this particular call. Every single week they have one, but I get to present every 6 weeks. And sometimes I get to present in the entire company, depending on if I really want to. Anyways, this time around, I get the opportunity. I can present on anything I want, really. Nobody really cares. They're just like, oh, great, community's doing these things. But there's some things that we've been doing, or community has been doing, to embed into the marketing organization, to embed into organization overall. So, for example, one of those things is, I had a customer come on to our community show, Reltio community show, which is our webinars. And he talked all about his experience from buying Reltio to implementing Reltio, and to his experience from, when you look at, he even talked about Informatica being kind of they're our competitor, a big competitor. And he talks about how Reltio was better. I mean, literally, like how much better Reltio is better than Informatica because of on-prem versus SaaS. SaaS is just where it's at, and it's easier to do this, easier to do that. I mean, for a full long hour, he's talking about business goals, business outcomes, business benefits, and he's talking all this stuff, right? And so what we did was, of course, I promoted that heavily. And so I said, hey, here's a quick hit video. And I created 2 or 3 quick hit videos from that one video. And I pushed it out to the marketing team. I pushed it out to my CEO and in hashtag community Slack channel, and then what happened was we embedded one of the quick hit videos directly into the main page of the website. It was like a 30-second long quick hit, and so I'm going to promote that community is embedding themselves. We're embedding ourselves into marketing. We're embedding ourselves into customer stories. We're embedding ourselves into product management, because they're the ones going on after every release talking about, different, new features that are coming out, and go in depth and getting our customers excited. And so there's 3 or 4 great examples of how community is embedded. And what is it doing? Is it tooting my horn? Yes, but indirectly, right? Like this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it, and so.
And that's a good point of clarification, because I certainly don't mean it to sound like anybody needs to go out and be like, hey, everybody, look at what I'm doing. It's much more of telling the story of
that's right.
What's happening in your space. And, to your point, when they say, oh, that's awesome, who runs this? And you're like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
exactly.
That's you humble it in. You tell
who cuts the videos? Me.
Yes.
For now. Anyways.
Yeah. You tell the story of your success, and then,
no,
it a little more quietly, and it works out really well. But
absolutely.
The reality is, I think in community, we often feel like my work is so public, everybody should be able to see, all they got to do is go to a forum or do an event. And it's like, yeah, but people aren't going to do that. You need to make it really easy for them to understand. And so I think getting good at storytelling is such a key.
It's the key. It's the key.
Oh, 100%. You and I were talking about in the pre-show, I've been doing some different classes. I've been focused kind of on professional development a lot lately.
Yeah.
And storytelling is one of the key elements that keeps coming up over and over and over. You have to get good at storytelling. And if you're not, there's a ton of great resources out there, but like being good at a slide deck and being good at putting a narrative arc and making it compelling is so important. I've seen a number of people that you're like, hey, tell me about the results of the thing you did. And they send you like a spreadsheet with numbers on it, or like a slide with a bunch of data. And you're like, so this feels like the data is going to back up your story.
Yeah.
Don't just throw me the data, because now I have to interpret it. And if I don't have a ton of context for it, I might make some assumptions that aren't correct. So it's really important to put that like narrative, and it'll just keep people engaged and interested. You send me a bunch of numbers, I'm going to glance at it and be like, okay,
good night.
That looks good.
I think that that is so true, because a lot of people present on things and they're just showing the data. And although the data is highly important to kind of show progress and things like that, there needs to be a story with it. Every single one that I have, every presentation I do in front of this EROC is got some narrative. Yes, they want to see the data up front. Great. Okay, here's the data. Now we're done with that. Those 2 or 3 slides. Here's the story behind the data. You know what I mean? Like,
tell me what it means. Tell me why is this good or bad? Is it getting better or worse, or staying the same?
Or just I agree. You tell some of that. It's good, bad, whatever. But also, I like to tell kind of like real life things, like, Pete from company ABC did this thing, and now he's on our main website. Sometimes I even do demos, like a search, for example, and I'll be like, look, matching and merging, community is #1 on matching and merging at Reltio. Here's the article. Who's here's who wrote it, and here's the webinar that it came from, right? Like the reality is, when you look at SEO, we are starting to become on the first page of Google. And it's really cool because Matt Gagan did a great job on this article, la, la, la. I did that one time, and Matt Gagan sent me a message, Chris, thanks so much for calling me out. Called him out because he did it, right? And it's just, yeah. I love telling those things, and you just got to go find it. It doesn't matter how big or small this story is, amplify it, make it big, and find those stories, because, especially when you first start out on a community, the stories are far in between. So you got to go find them and figure them out, make this little thing. Somebody posted for the first time. Oh my God, it was awesome. They even replied to this other message. This is great. See, it's working, that kind of stuff. Don't want to say go overboard all the time, but, you have to build that momentum, but also, when you continue to do that and you really show the value and customers then start saying things, tell people about it. If somebody writes it down or somebody says it, and you get a video of it, cut that video out and send it over to hashtag Slack or, community Slack or whatever your,
totally. Yeah.
It's so important. And then you're the person doing it, and you start getting that. That's one of my things that I think is so important that you hit on, and something I'm very excited about. It's about the storytelling and promoting yourself in some ways. It's very passionate about that.
Yeah, me too. So here's one of my little hacks is I highly recommend keeping a folder on your desktop.
Yeah.
Where every time somebody says something great about you or something great about your community or your work or whatever, screenshot that and put it in that folder.
Yeah.
And it's really handy for a couple of reasons. One, if you're having a bad day, go read through that stuff. That's going to make you feel a lot better. But two, now you've got this huge resource that you can build up over time where you can pull from those things. Anytime you need a quote for a deck, anytime you want to show something to your manager, if you're gunning for a promotion and you want to highlight, here's what users say about how great my work is or how it impacts them, that kind of thing.
That's right.
Everybody should have that, have that folder of any examples or any quotes about what's going well or how things have worked out.
I mean, I think that's important, especially when it comes to end of the year evaluations and things like that. If one of your employees, Nicole, I think I've been doing a really, you give me a 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. I really think I'm a 5. And here's why. This customer says this customer says that. And, they really found value out of this. And so, I think my work speaks for itself. I mean, look, and you'd have a hard time arguing with that because, I didn't really know people were saying that or whatever. That's good to know. Okay, well, here's your 5, or whatever. I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't.
Right.
But, I mean, there's a lot of things like that. And then, to stand out in front of the crowd, like this year or this last year, I won the CEO kind of, what was it? The CEO Circle Award, right? Only one person wins that every single year of all the stuff that you're doing. How did I win it? Well, I showed value to the company, but I promoted myself in a big way, and I stood out from every single person in the company. I mean, and so you got to think about doing those kinds of things, and it's very important. I mean, you still got to show value and you got to work your ass off. But I mean, why wouldn't you work your ass off when you're at work? You know what I mean? So anyways.
Yeah. And it gives you stuff to tweet about, right?
Yeah. LinkedIn about, tweet, people like it, reply, comment, and see it. And it's kind of a good thing because other people see that over time and they'll see all the things that you've done, and maybe they come for you later. Like they'll say, hey, it'd be cool to have, Nicole on, my team. Maybe I can, recruit her or whatever. I mean, that's happened several times in the past to me, so how do you know? I mean, that's how you get better. If the company's not willing to promote you, you've been there for 4 or 5 years and there's nothing, where you got to go somewhere else. You know what I mean? That to me is an option. And so how do you do that? Well, you promote yourself in some ways, and it's being that thought leader or really good at what you do, I think.
Yeah, I was talking with, again, one of my mentees about how to network and how to build her network. She's in her first job ever. She's thinking about changing jobs, and she's like, well, I don't really know how I do that. And so we started talking about a network. because, one of the things I share is I was like, these days, whenever I've been looking for a job, I haven't spent a lot of time like scanning want ads or something like that, or looking for job postings. Most job
It's been a while, Nicole. There is no want ads, I don't think.
Yeah, anymore. I know. Whatever they call them, LinkedIn. Job post wanted. Just pulling out the newspaper, looking for cute men.
Yeah. I haven't done that in a really long time. So
yeah, probably since high school. But no, it's most of those opportunities actually come these days because a recruiter reaches out,
right.
or because somebody in your network reaches out. Not that I'm job hunting right now. I'm very happy at Zendesk. Thank you. But, these are important skill sets for anybody to have. And, let's face it, we are in an uncertain job market. It's a good time to be thinking about how you promote yourself, how you build up your little portfolio, how you build your network. And that's not specifically the reason that I've gotten more active on Twitter and LinkedIn recently, but I did realize that I missed having a broader network.
Yep.
And I was really active on Twitter, like early, like 2008 to 2012-ish. I was super involved with it. I worked at tech startups a lot. I was doing a lot of things. And then I let it kind of go quiet for a while, and I've gotten more engaged again recently. And it's almost like, a whole new thing to me, where I'm simply like finding this new community of community managers and people to connect with. And, my mentee's actually like, well, how do I just like go to somebody, just ask them to talk to me? And I was like, pretty much, it's called an informational interview. Go out on LinkedIn, go out on Twitter, whatever, go find the people that are talking about things in your industry, find somebody you want to talk to, and reach out. I mean, that's how I ended up on this podcast, right?
Yeah. I just sent you a message, I think, and that's how I do it. I mean, you hit it spot on. I think, if you think, hey, I'm not a good networker, well, probably none of us are really that good at first and at anything we do. And we just spend time doing it.
Networking is like uncomfortable and awkward for almost everybody. She was like, I feel kind of awkward about it. I was like, yeah, everybody does. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, at first. I mean, now I don't really care. I was telling you a little story today is, I've reached out to several community leaders. I reach out to community leaders now to to interview on this podcast, or even have, you and I are now just having more discussions than anything, which I love. But, some people don't reply, some people do, and it doesn't matter. I don't really care. Like, I want to interview, and that's why I'm, sending them a message, because I think, they're probably doing some good things if they're at this really big company or whatever, and their title is VP of community. Would love to talk to them. How'd you do that? Like, one interesting interview that I had, and super cool guy, was Fran Murphy and he works specifically at Upwork. So he's a VP of community. And this guy, I don't know how many people know about him, but this guy is one of the smartest dudes I've ever met. Like, when you think of all the shit that they're doing, I mean, and I thought, geez, this guy, wow, I've never talked to him before, but but you never know who you're going to talk to if you don't reach out to them. And if you don't build the network, then it's going to be hard for you to find a job. I mean, like, the beauty of what I'm doing is, if something ever happened to my job, the first people I'm reaching out to are people from my podcast. Nicole, hey, just so you know, I'm looking for this, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Elizabeth, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Fran, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that's what you have to do. I know somebody that's done that to me. Hey, Chris, if you see something, and I would pass them along job opportunities, because I'm getting, people asking me if I want a job, at their company or whatever. So I'll just say, I'm not looking, but so-and-so is, and that's how that works,
Well, and that's a good point. Like, when recruiters reach out, sometimes they'll reach out with an opportunity where I'm like, that's not really for me.
Yeah.
But let's still have a conversation. I want to find out about that opportunity, because I might know someone who would be a good candidate for you. I might have a colleague or a peer or a friend who's looking for a job that's a right fit. So let's find out more about that opportunity so I can pass that along. And I love referring people over for other jobs. And for me, it's a little bit of paying it forward. About 7 or 8 years ago, I'd had a contract gig, and my contract came to an end, and the company wasn't able to renew it. And I was out of work, and I needed to figure out what to do. And so I sent an email out to about 50 people with my resume and said, I'm looking for my next opportunity. Here's the kinds of jobs I'm interested in, if you hear of anything. And somebody who I didn't even know very well, I just connected with her on Twitter, a woman named Rachel King. She's super awesome. She's based out of LA, I think. Pinged me and said, hey, this recruiter reached out to me about this gig. I don't think it's right for me, but you might be really interested. Do you want me to make an introduction? And that led to me getting my first job out in Silicon Valley and moving from Denver out to the Bay Area and getting that whole set of experience, which was super, super valuable for my career.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't built that network and sent that email out that said, hey, does anybody have any opportunities? And she was so kind to pass that opportunity along to me. And it literally changed my life, right? It changed the salary range I was working in. It changed the kinds of jobs I was doing. It was the precursor to sort of what led to me ultimately ending up here at Zendesk and doing the great stuff I'm doing here. So yeah, I think like building that network, knowing your story, knowing what, points you want to call out to about your own successes, super valuable stuff to be doing. And honestly, it's something that we should all be doing all the time. Don't wait until you're out of work to go, okay, well, now I got to go round up examples, and now I got to update my resume and my LinkedIn, and I got to go build my network. Like, you want to have that stuff handy. So, if on the off chance you get laid off or you just decide it's time to change jobs, you have that stuff ready and you can just roll forward with it. And you don't have
That's the beauty of LinkedIn, right? Is that it's easy to keep updated. So something I've done, and I love what you're saying is about kind of keeping all that updated. And I think that's important because it's really a lot of effort and time if you don't, because then you got to go look. So what I've done in the past was I'd look at other jobs that do similar things that I do and just copy and paste that shit, and just say, okay, well, that's not exactly what I do. So this is exactly, so that you don't have to come up with all that shit. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's a lot of stuff to come up with. You could even get on Word, and so a lot of times it gives you ideas of what, whatever job you're looking for, of like examples or ideas of other resumes that they can show you, which is kind of a cool feature. But the other point I think is important, Nicole, is do not burn bridges. And
yes.
I think that whenever you go to an organization, you never know who you're going to influence. I'll give you an example. So I'm all full of examples today because this is kind of my wheelhouse. It's the stuff I love to do.
Examples are good.
Exactly. Like if you don't give examples, then but so I worked for a company back years ago called financialforce.com, only for 8 or 9 months, and I was kind of doing community stuff and then customer success stuff. And then I went to another company, did that for about 3 years. And then somebody reached out to me like 4 years later, after that 3 years of one company, said, hey, Chris, we get this great opportunity. And I thought of you first. And so I told my boss about this and whatever, because we worked together. And so boom, I was like, all right, because my time was almost over with this one company. And so I interviewed with a company called Imperva, got the job and built their community from scratch. And then the way I came to Reltio is, who knew, but our CEO is the one that recruited me, right? Like my CEO today, that was the CEO of Imperva in the past, we talked a little, but not much. Like I didn't know, like I kept up with him or whatever, and then he recruited me later because he's seen all the things that I did with Imperva, right? And so I think, there's 2 opportunities that came to me. One was from Financial Force, where the VP of customer success recruited me and I was on her team, right? And then from Imperva to where I'm at today, the CEO recruited me. And I think that you never know who's watching, because I never knew those 2 were really knew anything about what I did. I had no idea. But do a good job, promote yourself in a big way through social channels, through, work channels like Slack or, whatever you use. And I think it's key. You never know. So. Oh,
you never know. A lot of people are always like, life is short, and like life is actually very long, and you have no idea the winding path and where you're going to re-intersect with people later in life.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's even just something as simple as like, maybe somebody doesn't necessarily think of you off the top of their head, but you get yourself in that hiring pool and they say, oh, I recognize that name.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of that person. I think I've talked to them before. And like we were saying too, like keep your stuff current and updated. Like I just finished the C-School Community Management Leadership course, which highly recommend, especially for anyone that's interested in moving into a leadership role. It's a really great like introduction to what it is to run a team or be a team lead. But you can bet that certification was on my LinkedIn and on my resume.
Yeah.
The day that I got it, I was like, let's just update that. You know, one of my team members is going to be one of the CMX communiteers and kind of help out with that community. And I was like, you should put that on your LinkedIn. And of course, he's like, am I getting fired? And I was like, no. But you should put it on your LinkedIn. You want to have it there because someday you won't work for me anymore. And you're going to want to have that listed. And also just you should be proud of those accomplishments. So yeah, it is so important to be thinking about those things just for the future and build those networks and build those relationships, because you never know where they're going to lead you. And sometimes it's going to turn into really cool stuff.
It really is. And I love this discussion. And, you know, it's not one that I felt like I just had to think about. You know, sometimes we have some deep discussions around the job of community management and things like that. And you really got to think about it. But, you know, this is really fun, Nicole.
Yeah, I agree. I love talking about all of this stuff. And sometimes, you know, there's a lot of career things that are relevant in the community space, and we can always take the nuance on it, you know.
I agree. And congratulations on getting your certification. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I'm quite pleased with it. And honestly, the best thing that came out of the course was the network. I got to meet community managers from some really cool companies and places that I would never have. I didn't have connections. I wouldn't have had insights. And like 3 or 4 of us are meeting up for coffee on you know, every couple of weeks on an ongoing basis after that course, because we learned so much from each other. We made those good connections. So that's the other thing is like, if you feel awkward about networking and getting out there and promoting yourself, go take a class. That's a great way to build your network and meet people. That's a much, you know, lower key way to do it. So
you meet for coffee, like just on Zoom or something, or? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, you met people right by your house. That's kind of cool.
I mean, there are a couple of community managers here in Wisconsin that are pretty awesome.
Oh, really?
That I'm not meeting in person. So,
okay. Yeah. Have you ever met Elizabeth from Slack? Have you met her yet?
Not in person, but we actually we're hanging out tomorrow.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Awesome. Tell her I said hello. Yeah, I was about to say, you have to meet her.
Yeah, no, Elizabeth's awesome. I mean, honestly, there's very, very few people in our field that I've met that I haven't been super impressed by. And that's the funniest thing to me. I think a lot of us tend to look around at people at other companies and be like, oh man, that person must be like so amazing. And I wonder if they'd ever have time to talk to me. And then you get on the phone and realize like, oh, we're peers.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the same problems. We're at the same level.
Yeah.
And that has been one of the coolest things to me about getting more active with really getting out there, meeting people and talking to them, is realizing like, oh, yeah, we're all kind of in this together. We're all doing the same stuff. We're all dealing with the same challenges. I don't need to be so nervous about like reaching out to somebody and asking them for coffee, and people are coming to me and asking me to have a chat. And yeah, it's just, I love community people because we all tend to be so wanting to connect and share and things like that.
What I love about community folks is that one is, we're working on a lot of the same stuff, right? You know, and sometimes it feels like you're alone. You know, maybe if you have a team, it doesn't feel as alone. But then when I talk to people like you, you know, and we're talking about content planning, engagement strategy, I don't know, whatever it is, roadmap, tactics, all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, you know, Nicole's doing some of this stuff. Or, hey, you know, I think I'm doing an amazing job at something, and you know, actually Nicole's been doing this for years and actually did something really amazing with it, you know, and it's like, oh, well, tell me more about that, you know, because I thought I was doing a pretty good job and doing okay, I guess, but not as much as, or, you know, and so you can really learn from each other and take and steal ideas from each other, because I mean, who cares at the end of the day? Like, if I'm going to do it at Reltio, who cares, right? You know, and so that's the beauty of this, you know.
Oh, 100%. I feel like community people in particular, we don't tend to be super competitive. We all tend to be like, let's raise what community is across the board. It's that rising tide raises all boats. And I feel like so many of us are here to help raise everybody else's boats up and help share. And the other thing to keep in mind is like, one, so many community professionals are either a solo person or like you're at a middle management level and you're the most experienced person about community at your company. And so you need to reach out to people at companies and build that network so that you have other people to bounce ideas off of, because a lot of time maybe your boss is, you know, a communications manager or something like that. They sort of know community, but like they probably don't know more about it than you. And if you need someone who does, you're looking outside your company to get that information. So that's super important. But it's also like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, like we're launching our user group program at Zendesk this summer. And I was like, there are lots of great examples of user group programs out there. You don't need to go try to reinvent this. Let's go figure out what the best ones are doing, and let's put our own spin on it, and let's do that. You know, there are tried and true strategies that work.
Yeah. Are you guys using like a Bevy or no?
Yeah. So we're using Bevy for that. And then we're looking at, one of the reasons I'm talking to Elizabeth is we're looking at potentially adding a Slack component and letting our groups talk to each other kind of in real time. So yeah,
that would be very interesting.
That's a whole podcast we could do.
we should think about that for next time, because you know, I've been talking a little bit with Bevy, but you know, for me, it's like that's another program I have to do, and I'm not sure I'm going to take that on right now. But there could be some opportunity for us to talk about kind of the, you know, ins and outs, how you started, what you do to start getting people interested in that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure, because I've heard you talk about user groups for a long time now, or at least that you're getting, you know, kicking it off.
We've been thinking about it and working on it for many months so far. We're on the brink. I think we're about 1 or 2 months out from actually doing it.
Yeah, we should talk about that in the next one. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Well, I think that's a great time to kind of close. And Nicole, thank you so much for coming on again. I love the conversation. A lot of fun. Good. Next, you know, at some point we'll have to have beers. That's what everybody says. But
I'm always sitting here having coffee instead. So, you know.
Yeah, well, I get same time. It's like noon, like at 1 o'clock here. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what you. I can't really like drink in the middle of my workday. It's not a productive way to get through the afternoon.
It's not a good combo. Thanks everyone for tuning in to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Thanks, Nicole.